Don't ask me what my hair is doing because I don't know. Today was going to be a cute hair day and then it just got really hot, so you get what you get. Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with day 2 of my BookTube birthday week. If you don't know what that means, I will link the playlist down below where I kind of talk about that in the first video, but basically I'm doing a week of content to celebrate 5 years on BookTube, and a lot of the videos are things that I feel like are an important part of my reading taste or my channel in some way, and today's video is going to be on my favorite comfort rereads. So I'm a big fan of rereading. I think that's a really important aspect of like my reading and just reading in general, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that, including, you know, getting more out of a story, being able to have more context, noticing different things, getting a better idea for what works and what doesn't work for you in stories. And there is also the comforting factor. That's not the only reason why I love rereading, but that is part of it, especially with certain books. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, are books that I consider comfort rereads for me. So let's get right into it. The first one is a relatively new addition to this series, or to this kind of book, I guess. I have a shelf on Goodreads, and that is the Regency Fairy Tales series by Olivia Atwater. This is kind of like, technically, I don't know if it would count yet because I have not yet reread the third book, but I have reread both of these two since they were published traditionally after being indie published. They are Half a Soul and 10,000 Stitches, and I also loved Long Shadow, which is the third book. I will be rereading that one this year and doing like a whole review on this series, but I really loved these, and the reason that I feel like they are a comfort reread, even though this has only been the second time I've read them, is that for one thing, I love them, you know, they're favorite books, and I also feel like they have the perfect amount of like acknowledging that things can be bad or things are bad, and then doing the best you can anyway. Like, that's something that I feel really strongly about. I think for something to be truly comforting, it has to acknowledge the suffering and the hard times, and these books definitely do that while also being like really cozy and really lovely. I love the romances, I love the characters, I love the themes about the world being sometimes a really difficult and hard place, but finding the little things that you can do to make things better. I just really love that. And also I feel like I have tested this very recently because I was in the middle of my reread of 10,000 Stitches and I ended up having just not a great day, and yeah, just wasn't doing that well, and I decided that I was going to finish my reread, and it did actually, like, it was a marked improvement in my like emotions and mood by the time I finished this book. So I feel like I have put this to the test, and it definitely is a comfort reread for me, and I really love these books. Next, I have a nonfiction book, and that is I'd Rather Be Reading The Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life by Anne Bogle. This actually was a recommendation from my friend Giselle, who has recently started posting book videos again. I will link her down below, but we did kind of a TBR swap, and this is one of the ones she picked for me. I got it from the library originally, but I loved it so much that I bought myself a copy, and I have read this a few times since then, and I think I actually started a reread at one point that I need to continue, but this is just really lovely. It's just, as it says, Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life. I just think this is an incredibly relatable book for anybody who loves reading, which probably everyone does if you're watching BookTube, but you know, there's like funny things, there's heartwarming things, there's really beautiful moments, there's poignant things. Anne Bogle talks about books that have had an impact on her. She talks about different like experiences of being a reader. Yeah, like she talks about like the importance of libraries, about rereading, about bookworm problems, organizing bookshelves. Like, I just really love this book, and it definitely is a comfort reread for me. Next, I have kind of an oldie but goodie. I have The Barefoot Book of Ballet Stories by Jane Yolen, Heidi E.Y. Stemple, and illustrated by Rebecca Gay. And this also comes with story CDs, so like audiobook, narrated by Juliet Stevenson, who I think I've listened to that maybe once, and she does do a great job, but I usually just read this myself. This was a book that I checked out many times from our public library, and then when I got older, I actually got my own copy. I think I asked for it for my birthday one year. But I love this. Like, I have always been really interested in the stories and fairy tales of ballets, and I just think these illustrations are absolutely stunning. And this is one where it's like some of the stuff that happens in ballets, like this is the Swan Lake one. So ballets are not often happy, although this one I think has more happy ones than is usual. But like, just for some reason I associate this book with comfort, maybe because I reread it so many times as a kid, and I remember going to the library to get it and all of that, but for whatever reason I feel like this book fits this category. And then, y'all probably knew this one was coming. That is Cotillion by Georgette Heyer. The spine is actually splitting, so at some point I will need to get a different copy of this book because I have read and reread and loved it so many times. But this is my favorite Georgette Heyer book. It's obviously a comfort reread for me. I love the romance, I love the humor, I love how cozy her writing always feels for me. I've said this before, but she's one of those authors where even if I don't love the book, I have a reasonably good time reading it just because her books feel very cozy for me. How many times am I going to say the word cozy in this video? I'm so sorry, but this is my favorite of hers, and I love these characters so much. I love the romance. As I was saying, I love the humor in the writing. I love that Kitty, our main character, is an unapologetically feminine girl. Like, she's really excited to go to balls and to wear beautiful dresses for the first time, and I just really love this book, and this one has gotten me through some pretty hard times. This is one that I return to again and again when I need something extra comforting, and I love it very much. This next one is kind of a weird one. That is Indiscretion by Jude Morgan, and I cannot explain why this one feels like it does to me. Basically why I would put this on this list, because there are things that bother me about it. This is not a perfect book for me. I think it's the only one on this list that I've given 4 stars instead of 5, and I don't really recommend this book that often because I don't know who to recommend it to, and I can't really explain why it works for me so well. Maybe because I read it at a time that I really needed this kind of coziness, and now I just associate it with feeling better. I don't know if that makes sense, but how do I even summarize this book? So Caroline Fortune reluctantly resolves to make the most of her introduction to polite society. Her father has died, so she becomes a companion to this, really unpleasant older woman. Caroline's beauty and intelligence soon attract admirers, but not all suitors are the gentlemen they appear to be, and it isn't long before she finds herself embroiled in their indiscretions. Could Caroline be in danger of losing her heart, her head, and her reputation? A witty tale of love, deceit, and decadence, Indiscretion brings the elegance and flamboyance of Regency England vividly to life. There's issues that I have with this book. There are parts that frustrate me. The romantic lead is, I like his interactions with the main character, but he also frustrates me, and I also think there should have been more of an emphasis on the romance, given that we're supposed to be very invested in it, but it just works for me anyway. I can't really explain it. I've read this one a couple times, and again, it's just one that I return to when I need it. I think also because it reminds me a little bit of Cotillion, just a tiny bit because of the setting and everything, and some of the romantic entanglements, but it's one that I haven't read as many times, so if I want something that is a cozy reread but that feels a little bit fresher, then maybe that's why I gravitate to this one. I don't know, I'm guessing. Then another one that you guys are probably not surprised to see on this list is The Blue Castle by Lucy Maud Montgomery. This, like Cotillion, is probably one of the books that I have returned to for comfort the most. And this is the premise of this book does not sound like it would be cozy and comforting, but I promise it is. So our main character is Valency Sterling, and she has always been just really downtrodden by her family. They boss her around, they don't treat her well, they just, they're not physically hurting her or anything, but she is clearly very, very unhappy and just unloved, really. And then near the beginning of this book, she gets some news from a doctor that basically she doesn't have long to live, that there is a problem with her heart, she's not gonna live very long, and the impact of hearing that is surprising because suddenly Valency is I literally have nothing to lose. And so she just starts telling people off. She starts telling them what she thinks of them. She refuses to back down when she knows that she's right. She does things that actually make her happy. She gets away from her horrible family. She's not she doesn't go out of her way to be rude to people, but just the fact of her standing up for herself is taken as rudeness, and it is so satisfying to see her give everyone set downs. She ends up going to take care of this young woman who is dying of consumption and who everybody else in the town has abandoned because she had a child out of wedlock, and so everyone is basically well, she got what's coming to her, who cares? And Valency is one of the only people who is really upset about this and who is how dare you? She deserves, comfort and love as much as anyone. So she goes to take care of her. She becomes really good friends with her, and she's kind of there to nurse her in her last days. And then after that, she ends up proposing a marriage of convenience with a young man who she likes, and because she's not going to live that long, she feels, again, she has nothing to lose. So she starts putting herself out there, and the romance is really lovely as well. There's a lot of beautiful nature descriptions. Again, don't let the premise fool you. I promise it is really cozy. But yeah, this book also deals a lot with grief, and I feel that is part of what makes this book comforting as well. Like I was saying earlier, like there's some books that are cozy because nothing very bad is going to happen, you know, and that's totally fine. I definitely have those cozy books as well. But then there are cozy books that are comforting because they acknowledge the hurt and then they deal with it anyway, or they provide comfort anyway, even in spite of these difficult or sad things that happen. And I feel like that's the category that The Blue Castle is. I love it. I just love Valency as well. I find this book really, really satisfying. Like seeing her stand up for herself is just so great. And it's one of my favorite books of all time. I love it. Definitely my favorite Ella Montgomery book. So if you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend it. Hey y'all, so obviously this is an extra clip because I forgot a book, and it was one that like I have several editions of, and I guess I was so focused on figuring out which edition I should use, that I should talk about specifically, that I just forgot to include one at all. So that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. She's listed as F.H. Burnett, which is interesting. I don't know that I've seen that before. And this is the really beautiful copy from, I think it's Wordsworth Editions. I'm not used to seeing this book look so short, but this is the newest edition that I got, and I entirely blame Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe because she showed these gorgeous editions, so I picked up a few in different books. But yeah, The Secret Garden is one of my favorite books. It's one of my formative books. I've said before that it's one of the first books that I can remember reading and rereading over and over again. I have the original copy that I read right next to me. You can see that it is like really split on the spine, and that this was back when you could buy a book for $3.99. Very exciting. Actually, I guess there's probably some old classic editions that you could still buy for that cheap, but still. Yeah, so this is a story I love. I love Mary Lennox as a character so much. I also think this book was really formative for me in figuring out, or I guess developing some of my reading tastes. Like, I love a strong character arc. Mary Lennox definitely has one. I love very like thematic heavy books, although this was something I didn't realize until much later. And I also think this book was instrumental in helping me not be too intimidated by classics. There are definitely problems with this book in terms of racism and colonialism and ableism, so do keep that in mind. This book is not perfect by any means, but I do really love the story and the writing. This is a very cozy feeling book. It's a very hopeful feeling book, and there are, I think, some ways that it is a little more modern in its ideas than you might expect. Like, I think some of the ways that it talks about depression and mental health, although it doesn't use those terms, a lot of it is not how we would talk about it today, but there are some, I think, interesting ideas about, I don't know, about like your mental health affecting your physical health that I think are really interesting. And as I said, I just love Mary so much. Like, she's such a little brat, but she goes through so much character growth, and yet at the end she still feels recognizably herself, which I love. I think this is a really unusual children's classic because it has a main character who is this young kid who is pretty awful at the beginning, even though some of it is for very understandable reasons, but she's a very unpleasant person at the beginning of this book. And then by the end, she is a lot kinder and nicer, but she's not completely. Like, I always say that I feel like she could still scream somebody out of a tantrum if she had to, which I think is very unusual for a children's classic. So yeah, this is just one of my formative books. I continue to come back to it when I need comfort. I love rereading it. I don't even know how many times I have reread it, but it's been a lot. And yeah, I am not like a gardening person, and this book always makes me want to be, which I think in itself is pretty impressive. So I had to throw this one in there because I forgot to mention it in my video. So back to Past Kara. And then the last one before I get to kind of like an honorable mention, I guess, is, again, I guess this is a section of like, these are not surprises, but I have to mention Jane Austen. I picked my two favorites, and probably the two that I would consider most in the comfort reread category: Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice. I have reread Pride and Prejudice so many times that like, it's just so familiar to me. Like, I love it every time, and like, I basically especially if it was with me and my mom and my sister, we could basically construct the entire like book by ourselves, because we all know the story so well. And Jane Austen is a comforting author for me, not just because of her writing and of her stories, but also because it was an important comfort growing up as well. Like, the 5-hour miniseries is what me and my sister would always watch when we were sick. Like, we were staying home from sick from school, and so I just associate her books and her stories in general with the feeling of being safe and warm and cozy and loved and comforted and just all the warm fuzzy things. Yeah, so Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion are my favorites. I think Persuasion because it is like a very quiet story, and it's so quietly beautiful because Anne Elliot is a very reserved person. She's a very kind and good person. She's not flashy. Like, she's not a Lizzie Bennet. Even though I love Lizzie, not every main character has to be Lizzie. Not every person has to be Lizzie. And there's something really beautiful about Anne being just the kind of person she is and still getting a really beautiful love story. So that's one of the reasons I love Persuasion. But yeah, like, Jane Austen is just always a go-to comfort read for me, and especially these two books. And then my kind of honorable mention is, I'm gonna try and find the exact editions and like put pictures up, but I wanted to mention a couple of Barbie books that were comfort rereads for me and my sister as a kid. I don't know where they are now, but I wanted to put these up, and one of them was kind of each of ours. So the one I had was like 7 stories, and they would have like, it's so hard to describe. Like, the illustrations were, I guess, like photos, and they had like Barbie dolls that were like dressed and posed, and so there were like a lot of pictures in the book, and they were just like 7 different like Barbie stories. And then the other one is like a really big, tall book that was it like an alphabet themed one, maybe? Can't remember. I think it was. And that one was more my sister's, but we used both of these. And the reason these are like comfort rereads is because when we were little and we would have bad dreams, we would get up and we would go, and like my mom would like read these with us, and then when we got older we would like just read these by ourselves, you know, when we would have bad dreams. So I just wanted to mention those as well, because those are definitely, I think, the oldest comfort rereads on this list. So that is a list of my favorite comfort rereads. So obviously I have lots of favorite books. I have lots of books that I enjoy rereading, but these are specifically ones that are my go-tos for feeling cozy, feeling comforted, when I want to reread something specifically to feel cozy and comforted. These are the books that I go to. So let me know if you also love any of these books. Let me know a cozy comfort reread, like a favorite for you, if you would like to share that. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!